You, stop stalking people on Facebook. Take a minute and listen to this video because I'm about to tell you about the second big reason for why you can't get into your abs or at least see that nice flat toned stomach. And that reason is your failure to identify and deal with conflicts. First things first, if you have not already, you should really subscribe to my email. The box is coming up right now. If you're in that big window, make sure you minimize it and then you'll see, or hit the pause button in a minimized frame and you'll see it. Put your email in so I can stay in your head a little bit. You're not gonna get spammed, but I do write my own content. As you can see, I do my own videos, and the more that I can be in your head, the better chance you have of staying motivated and consistent. So, and everything I do is free. Now, the other thing that I want to tell you is that you should really not watch this video if you haven't watched the first part to this three-part series, which is the first reason why you cannot get into your abs. And that reason was what I call the forbidden food mentality. Now, if you haven't watched that, I strongly urge you to go to that video first. I will make sure that the link is below in the comments section. And speaking of comments, if you have any or questions, please feel free to leave them and I'll definitely answer those. So on to the second reason, which is the failure to identify conflicts and knowing how to deal with them. So I want to introduce you to two researchers that I'm familiar with their work at least. Dr. Ayelet Fishback, and she has a PhD in psychology and currently is a professor of behavioral science and marketing at the University of Chicago, and also Dr. Christian Mirseth, who's got his PhD in managerial and organizational behavior. His specific focus is in decision making and judgments, and if you know me, you know I love those topics. So together they have published, I must have counted at least a dozen, if not more, studies on why we make decisions the way we do and why we're not able to be disciplined. They call it self-regulation. Why we struggle, or what factors allow us to succeed in decision making, in being, say, disciplined, while what factors, prevent us from doing it. And so a lot of their studies were relating to food choices, because as we all know, a lot of us struggle with making the right decisions when it comes to food, especially because we have that good versus bad dichotomy. So they're asking, well, why are we struggling if we have this decision about, what's good food versus what's bad food, and we know we have this distinction and we're clear on it, why is it that we are still unable to eliminate the bad food and stick to only the good food? And of course, this is all under the assumption that there is a such thing, which by now you should know that I do not believe there is a such thing, mainly because I've never seen any kind of real medical or scientific evidence to support these claims that, in my experience, everybody believes. Now, they figured out with all their research that there are two components that go into making the decisions that you want to be making in order to succeed at whatever you might be working towards. Maybe it's studying instead of partying, maybe it's finishing a work project instead of going to sleep early, or in our case, it's how do you control your caloric intake, eat less, or at least avoid foods that you think you shouldn't be eating. And they broke it down into two things through all these studies, and they said that the first thing that needs to happen for somebody to succeed is to have a wide frame mentality versus a narrow frame mentality. That might sound confusing, but I'm going to explain that in 2 seconds. And actually, I'll explain it right now. The wide frame mentality basically implies that you're seeing the big picture. You're not just in the moment, but you're also acknowledging the long term. So for example, somebody might feel very, very tired. Maybe you work a lot and you're really tired and you just want to go to sleep, but you also know that if you don't finish this assignment, you might get fired tomorrow, or at least penalized. And somebody who is failing to identify the wide frame mentality would just focus on the fact that they're tired and forget about what could possibly happen in the future. Whereas somebody who's in the wide mentality obviously says, well, you know what? It's more important for me to keep my job than it is to get some extra sleep. So I'm going to just stick it out, finish this work. And now the second thing that needs to happen, though, is it's not enough to just have a wide mentality. You actually have to acknowledge that you are going to pretty much repeat the same behavior over and over and over again. Now, these things might not make sense just yet, but hold that thought for a second and watch how I hopefully can tie all this together for you by the end of this video. So I'm going to pull out this chart. I had a critic one time, and she told me that I don't do enough charts in my videos, so here's one. I chose one study that they did. I like this one because it was simple and it can really drive my point home. So what these researchers did, Dr. Fishback and Dr. Mirseth, they conducted this at a university. I don't remember which one. Actually, University of Chicago. And they had two food stands separated. You couldn't, one person who was at one stand could not see the other one, obviously. And in these food stands, there was a bowl of carrots and a bowl of chocolate. Okay, so two stands, bowl of carrots, bowl of chocolate. One stand had a sign that said April 12th food stand, and the other stand had the sign that said spring food stand. Now, this is right here the difference between a wide and narrow mentality. April 12th implies just right now, this day, nothing else. But the word spring implies, weather's warming up, beach season's coming. All these thoughts that kind of make somebody think, maybe I don't want to do anything that's going to make me gain weight right now, or maybe I want to make sure that I'm losing weight. And that should make sense to you, right? So in this simple study, they found out that because they put the word spring instead of April 12th, people ate less chocolate and more carrots. And then, of course, in the other scenario, people ate more carrots. On the April 12th stand, they ate more chocolate, less carrots. On the spring stand, they ate less carrots. More carrots and less chocolate. And that should make perfect sense. So as I was saying before, this is the wide frame, this is the narrow frame. So that's interesting. And let's put all this together now in terms that actually make sense for the context of this discussion, which is your food choices. So, you may be at a party and you're presented with cookies, and the flaws that would occur is, one, you're in the moment and you're like, I just want these cookies so bad, and you completely forget about the fact that if you have these cookies right now and you go over on too many calories, if that's possible, and you gain weight as a result, you may feel satisfaction right now from having those cookies, but you're going to feel a whole lot worse in the future when you gain that weight. Okay? So that's the conflict in the moment right there. Now, again, they're saying that you need to be able to identify both things. So if you're just acknowledging that you want cookies right now in this moment and you're forgetting about the future consequences, you're going to eat those cookies. But their studies show that if you can be reminded of the fact of the bigger picture, knowing that in the future you might actually regret this decision, if you can remember that in the moment, you are not likely to eat those cookies, or at least maybe eat less of them. So that's, again, the wide versus narrow frame. And then rule number 2 is actually even more important, because you should be acknowledging that those cookies are going to keep appearing in front of you for the rest of your life. And if you eat them today, you're more likely to eat them again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Obviously, it doesn't work exactly like this. It's a little contradicting to my other video where I talk about the forbidden food mentality, where you're going to end up eating those cookies anyway, which actually, if you really tie it together, does make sense, because I'm telling you to have those cookies in a moderate manner. You eat the cookies when you want them, because you wanted them, No other reason, no justifications, and acknowledge the fact that those cookies might be there in the future, and in that future, if you want those cookies, you're going to have them again because it's no big deal. And if it's not a big deal, you will succeed. So while on the surface it seems like it's contradicting the other information, it actually works very, very coherently with it. That you should remember that you don't need to avoid the cookies in the moment, but that is something that you could do, at least to make sure you don't eat too much of them, by reminding yourself why you're doing this. I mean, how badly do you want to be in those in that two-piece bikini, this summer? So that's the one perspective, and then the other perspective is, well, you know what? I can have cookies, and I should have cookies whenever I want to. I shouldn't feel bad about it. It's food. It's just food. That's all it is. So I'm going to have some cookies now, but I'm not going to overdo it because you know what? I can have cookies tomorrow again if I want to, and the next day, and the day after that. In fact, one example that I really like to present to clients who make this argument, oh, well, I can't put any cookies in my house because if I do, I'm going to eat them. So I actually flip that on them and I say, well, imagine this scenario where you had nothing in the house, no food except those cookies in the cupboards, in the fridge, everything you opened, under your bed even, whatever, stuffed into your mattress, just cookies. How do you think you're going to always eat a ton of cookies nonstop? Do you think you're going to overeat on calories with cookies? Maybe the first day, maybe the second day, maybe even the third day, but it's only a matter of time before you get sick of those cookies and you're not going to eat that much more of them, right? So that's also should be an interesting thought experiment, right? Because you try to say, oh, I have no self-control. I'm going to eat cookies if they're around me because I love them. I'm addicted to them. I love that word. I'm addicted to sugar. Yeah, well, what if you had nothing else but sugar to eat? How addicted would you be at that point? That's a very interesting thing to think about. So tying this in a little bit more is this whole short-term versus long-term conflict. If you want to succeed, research is very clear about this, that people who track their food intake, at least in the short term, succeed. They find out how much they're eating, they're tracking their calories, and they're not overeating. They're also not undereating, mind you, but they're not overeating, and so they're losing weight, whereas people who don't track don't lose weight. But even more important than that is people who can plan ahead of time. Okay, if you're allotted, say, 2,000 calories a day for a nice, slow and steady weight loss that'll last forever, well, plan ahead. How do you eat? Are you a night eater? Are you a big breakfast person? Maybe you don't eat breakfast at all. Maybe you like 6 meals a day. Maybe you like 2 meals a day. Are you going to have 2 1,000 calorie meals? Are you going to do 1 1,000 calorie meal and 2 500 calorie meals? Maybe you want to do 6 300 calorie meals and a 200 calorie snack. It does not matter. As long as you plan ahead and you stick to a script that works for you without any judgments, because there's no right way to go about it. What's more important is to do something that you know you can stick to, something that doesn't feel like you're deprived. But the problem is, most of you make excuses. Oh, I have such a hard job, and I have all these kids, and I'm always running around, and this is happening, and that's happening, and I'm giving a tone like this is not valid excuses, but actually maybe it is valid, and I'm not here to judge you on whether you're busy or not, too busy or not, but the simple fact is that you're creating a conflict, okay? Is it more important for you to avoid taking the time to plan ahead and make sure you succeed on your diet, or is it so that you can more important to avoid that, or is it more important to actually take the time to do it so that you can see your abs down the road? What is more important? Make a decision and commit and stick to it, and don't keep going back and forth. Whatever decision you make, you have to remember every time that there's a conflict of interest. Every single time that you have a temptation that maybe shouldn't be there, or in this case, a real temptation is to not track, to be too lazy to record or to track. Well, that ease of not tracking and recording, I hope it's worth not being in the body that you want to be. But if you can acknowledge that it's not worth it and you remember that every single time, I would venture to say you're probably not going to have such a difficulty succeeding. Now, again, I'm not judging you if you're that person who has all these excuses. An excuse is an excuse, no matter what you make of it. If you can't do it, if it's a legitimate thing, if you really can't do the things that are necessary to succeed, and yes, these are necessary techniques, at least in the short term, well, stop feeling guilty about it. Because if you can't do it, you're not going to succeed. So you should just acknowledge this right now and let it go. It's not going to help you to not succeed and feel like crap on top of that. You know, if you cannot do it, acknowledge the fact that you're never going to see a beach body, or maybe one day in the future when you decide to commit to doing the things that need to be done. But definitely stop feeling guilty if you realistically cannot do this. Okay? So again, put your email in so I can stay in your head and keep giving you good advice, and maybe even throw some really cool deals, your way. And stay tuned for part 3. I'm going to give you a third reason for why you are unable to get into your abs. As you can see, a lot of this is psychology. It's really psychology and nothing more.